Hey guys, tonight we're diving into one of the most strangely relaxing episodes in recorded history. The time a royal pigeon, carrying confidential messages, simply forgot its way. You can imagine the scene. Tapestried hallways, nobles whispering. Behind marble columns, a castle in tense silence. And right in the middle of it all, a pigeon with the emotional compass of a potato. So before you settle in, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you really like what I do here. And tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? And what time is it there now? Now turn off the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft noise in the background, and let's relax together with this journey today. You're standing at the edge of a medieval courtyard. It's early morning, and the sky is that bluish grey that's somewhere between dawn and mist. The air smells of wet stone and lavender. The castle servants have already scrubbed the floors with aromatic herbs to keep the fleas away. Before you is a tower. It is not the tallest in the kingdom, but it is special. Because it is where the Queen's pigeons are kept, and these are no ordinary pigeons. They are trained messengers, feathered diplomats carrying secret notes, gossip disguised as logistics, royal seals, and perhaps an order or two of extra wine for discreet occasions. You step through the wooden door and up the spiral staircase, your hand brushing the cool iron banister. At the top, a warm, dusty wooden room greets you, full of fluttering wings, glowing eyes, and soft cooing sounds. A young page beckons you to him and holds out a tiny scroll, so tightly rolled it looks like a cinnamon stick. He points to a grey pigeon with a white stripe on its back. "That's the fastest one," he says, as if introducing a warhorse. You come closer. The pigeon looks at him with the serenity of someone who has just forgotten where he lives. Even so, the parchment is delicately tied to his little leg, and, with a well-rehearsed movement, the boy throws it out the open window. And that's where it should all end, but it doesn't end, because this time, something goes wrong. Instead of soaring into the sky and heading straight for its destination castle, the pigeon turns around once, twice, and makes a sharp left turn. You frown. Was that? The boy strains his eyes. On the? Yes, it's south, straight into the woods, straight into nowhere, and, as you'll soon discover, straight into the most absurd diplomatic misunderstanding of the decade. Historically, carrier pigeons were considered a reliable form of communication, especially between nobles and military personnel. They were trained with discipline, fed specific diets, and sometimes treated better than ordinary soldiers. But at the end of the day, they were still pigeons, and pigeons sometimes have desires. You descend the stairs, already hearing the murmurs. Begin to spread through the castle corridors. Someone has dropped a tray of grapes. Another whispers something about omen. Meanwhile, among the treetops in the distance, a small grey dot flies further and further off course, carrying with it a message that was supposed to be private, encrypted and secure. But soon, it will no longer be, because pigeons do have wings, yes. But memory? That's another story. You are now in the castle's inner garden, watching the hustle and bustle of messengers and pages coming and going in a contained hurry. A hurry that tries to appear calm, but which reveals nervousness in the rapid blinking and the nervously twisted sleeves. The news has spread. The pigeon is missing. Or, more precisely, the pigeon was rebellious. The Queen doesn't know yet, but the chief advisor is already pale, looking up at the sky as if expecting the dove to return repentant, bringing with it the intact parchment and perhaps a letter of apology, written with its own beak. You hear snatches of conversation. He turned left, didn't he? But they never turned left. What was on that note, anyway? The truth is, no one knows for sure. The note was small, yes, but the words on it could move troops, start alliances, or end royal marriages with the delicacy of an axe. You walk towards the kitchen, where rumors tend to sprout like leavened bread. And there, amidst the smell of garlic and fresh pasta, a cook whispers, "They say it was for the Duchess of the Border, about the ceremony or about her son." Another whispers, "Or it was a warning of betrayal." You raise an eyebrow. Historically, coded messages were common in medieval courts, and pigeons, when properly trained, were faster and more discreet than any knight. But there was a problem. Pigeons only knew how to return to one place. They were experts at going home. And if their home was poorly defined or accidentally changed, well, let's just say that some of them ended their careers on other people's rooftops, in unfamiliar barns, or, as in this case, disappeared among the trees. And that's where the paranoia begins. The counselor calls an emergency meeting. You are dragged along because apparently you saw the pigeon leave, which magically turns you into a reliable eyewitness. The council chamber is dark, stuffy, with thick tapestries that muffle sound and trap heat. The counselor speaks. We need to assume the worst. Someone mutters, "What's worse?" He responds with the drama of a priest announcing the end of times. The pigeon was intercepted. A dense silence sets in. You don't have the heart to say that, in your opinion, the pigeon simply made a mistake. That maybe, just maybe, it was confused by the change in the wind, or by the reflection of the sun on the roof. Or so, why not, it was distracted by a particularly interesting insect. But of course no one wants to hear that. Let's send another one, says one of the knights. But what if the other one is also engaged? Committed how? Are you going to chat with the first pigeon? Do they have a union now? You stifle a laugh. You shouldn't laugh. But then again, should you? Historians still debate whether these episodes of winged messengers were taken as seriously as some records suggest, or whether some of it was fueled by a collective fear of uncertainty. After all, in times when a letter could alter the balance of kingdoms, even a disoriented pigeon could appear to be a spy in disguise. And then a decision arises. They're going to send scouts, yes, armed men, to hunt a pigeon. You don't know what to think about this, but you know what to do. You volunteer to go along. Not because I think I'll find anything, of course, but because between following pigeon hunters and being stuck in the room listening to debates about feathers and flight, rotations, the first option seems more fun. You ride a horse. The sun is already beginning to set, dyeing the sky amber, and off you go, riding into the woods, chasing a pigeon that at this very moment is sitting on an old mill, pecking at fallen grain, and completely oblivious to the fact that it has caused a diplomatic crisis with nothing more than a detour and some lazy digestion. You smile. It's official. History is out of control. You ride along the road with a strange sense of noble and yet utterly absurd mission. The sound of hooves beating against the dry earth sounds like a ceremonial drum, although the ritual involves hunting a pigeon with royal credentials. Beside him are 3 other knights, all too serious for the task. One of them carries a net. The other, a copper tube he insists on calling a sound tracking instrument. No one dares ask what it actually does. The forest approaches slowly, thick, damp, smelling of moss and old wood. The branches whisper in the wind, as if they already knew about the pigeon and all the confusion, and were laughing through the leaves. You think, what if he's alone? Flying around, free, happy, maybe meeting a charming dove from another village. But this kind of thinking is not welcome today. The group stops in front of the abandoned mill. It is the first point of the search. A man who was grinding grain there that morning said he saw a curiously disciplined bird land on the roof. You dismount and approach carefully, your steps slow over the creaking wood. And there he is, or a pigeon, grey, chubby, with feathers that look a little more well-groomed than normal. He stands on the windowsill, pecking at a cornflake with a serenity that borders on provocation. One of the knights whispers, "Could it be him?" You take a closer look. On the ankle, something shiny, a tiny tube attached with thread. Yes, it's him. You step closer and extend your hand slowly, as if preparing to greet an eccentric ambassador. The pigeon looks, tilts its head, takes 3 steps back, and flies. It simply takes flight, flaps its wings with exaggerated, almost theatrical force, and disappears into the trees. The hunter with the net stumbles trying to catch him. The one with the tracking trumpet points it at the sky, but of course it's no use. And you just sigh. He saw us coming. Of course you did. You have 2 eyes and half a brain more than most of us. Now the real part of the chase begins. You head for the trail behind the mill. A narrow, shaded trail full of low-hanging branches and natural traps, protruding roots, loose rocks, holes disguised by leaves. the kind of trail that seems to be laughing at your horse. As you progress, you begin to think about how pigeons were actually extremely useful animals, used since ancient times by Egyptians, Persians, and even Roman legions. They carried messages with frightening accuracy, when of course they were well trained and without personal aspirations. There are reports of pigeons flying hundreds of miles with war orders, birth proclamations, or love notes so urgent that the paper seemed to have a fever. But there are also lesser-known stories of pigeons that have disappeared for weeks, only to reappear in the wrong towns, with their feathers disheveled and a "don't ask me" expression. Historians still debate whether these failures were actually the fault of the birds or their trainers. Some argue that there were pigeons who were more independent, a kind of silent winged rebellion. Others think that the wind, the smell of food, or even the distraction of lights could have interfered. You start to think that this pigeon was definitely one of the independents. The group decides to stop at a stream to rest. While you drink water and eat hard bread with even harder cheese, you notice a feather floating in the current, light, loose, going wherever it wants. You wonder, is the pigeon doing the same? The counselor back at the castle certainly wouldn't like that image. You head back onto the road with the others, crossing a low-lying field. The sky now more gold than blue. The sun begins to set, tinging everything with a hue of adventure's end, even though the adventure has barely begun. One of the knights points to a crooked tree in the distance. There, something moved. You run. You get close. It's not the pigeon, it's a hare with a leaf stuck in its snout, looking as confused as you do. You laugh, the group doesn't. Night is approaching. You light a torch, not out of necessity, but out of dignity. The search continues. And the pigeon? Maybe he's in a barn. Maybe he's in another tower. Maybe he's flying over it all with an important note still attached to his foot, and no sense of urgency in his chest. You ride again, and the search continues. Darkness begins to spread like ink spilled over the field. The shadows lengthen, the sounds change. No longer the rustle of leaves in the wind, but the slow creak of trees and the cautious rustling of small animals trying not to be seen. You and the knights arrive at a village, small with about 7 houses and a tavern so tilted that it seems to be dozing standing up. A dog barks half-heartedly. An old woman closes the window as soon as she sees you approaching. "We are looking for a pigeon," says one of the knights, in a solemn voice, as if he were asking for shelter for an army. The innkeeper laughs, but inwardly, "Sure. And I'm looking for my dinner from yesterday, if you find it too." Still, he points to the back of the village. "Talk to Mrs. Anselma. She talks to chickens. Maybe she's expanding her horizons." You thank them and continue on. The path is dirt, lit only by a lit torch and the moon, which now reveals itself amidst the clouds like a lazy watchman. Anselma's house is covered in ivy and smells like something between onions and old candles. She opens the door with a look in her eyes that tells you that you're coming. "The pigeon?" she asks before you can even say a word. "It came early this morning. It landed on the branch of the lemon tree. It stayed there staring at me." As if it wanted to ask the way back home, you lean in, curious. "Is he still around?" "Not anymore," she answers, taking a cup with herbal tea that looks more like a potion. "He left for the monastery of St. Irenaeus in a hurry, but flying crookedly as if he was carrying more than feathers." You thank her. One of the knights hands her a coin as a token of gratitude. She nods and keeps it. "If you find him, tell him I left food on the windowsill." And flying aimlessly wears out the soul. You mount your horses again and head to the monastery. The trail there is steep, cutting through rocks and narrow paths. The sound of hooves echoes differently here, more muffled, more respectful, as if even the path knows they are heading to a sacred place. The monastery gate is ajar. A wide-eyed novice greets them. He doesn't speak. He just points to the bell tower. High above, barely visible, a grey shape rests on the stone ledge. A pigeon. Yes, it can be any pigeon. But on his chest, there is a dark spot. Something held together by a strap, and most importantly, he is sleeping. Yes, sleeping. After all that, he stopped to take a nap? One of the knights whispers, indignant. "Even messengers need a break," you reply. surprising even yourself with the depth of the sentence. You walk up the stairs in silence, step by step, feeling the cold of the stones and the weight of the mission. Up there the wind blows hard, and the pigeon miraculously is still asleep. The message tube shines under the moon. You approach with the caution of a word thief. You extend your hand. You touch the small bronze tube. The pigeon opens one eye, then the other. It doesn't run away, it just watches. You untie the strip with a quick knot, like someone opening a suspicious present. Inside the tube, a paper, folded to perfection. Sealed with wax. The royal coat of arms is still there, slightly blurred but intact. You sigh, mission accomplished? No, because the dove, now light, now free, takes flight without warning. No thanks, just leave. And you watch, not knowing whether. You're relieved, frustrated, or secretly envious. Maybe all of this together. One of the knights says, "Shall we go back to the castle?" You look at the tube in your hand. Not yet. First, I want to know what that pigeon did in the monastery. The Sadi. Others look at each other. Do you want to investigate the footsteps of a bird? You smile. Exactly. Because now, more than delivering the message, you want to understand what made the messenger deviate. And maybe, just maybe, find out if he left anything behind. You slowly descend from the bell tower, the message tube clutched. In your hand, your mind still fixed on the image of the pigeon flying away, as if it knew something you didn't. The novice is still down there, holding a lamp with a visible tremor. Whether from cold or nervousness, it's hard to tell. Did he do something here? You ask as you reach the last step. The young man hesitates. He stood still, in the same position, for hours. One of the monks thought it was a statue. Another said it was an omen. You frown. Omens and pigeons don't always mix well, especially in times when untimely rain was already seen as a sign of a curse. Did anyone approach him? Only Brother Matthias. You ask to be taken to the brother. The novice nods and crosses the monastery's inner courtyard, where fountains drip slowly and the shadows of palm trees stretch like lazy arms in the moonlight. Brother Matthew is a frail-looking man, but with eyes that seem to have seen 3 lives before his own. He is in the scriptorium, lit by candles and surrounded by pages of beautifully crooked writing. Did you come because of the pigeon? He asks, before you even say a word. You nod. It landed there, he says, pointing to the window. And stayed. It barely moved. I thought about shooing it away, but there was something in its eyes. Something restless. Restless, Matthias makes a gesture with the pen. He didn't look at me, or outside. He looked at the altar. You follow, his gaze to the corner of the room. A small stone altar, unadorned, just a low candle and a relic embedded in the center. A bronze shell with Latin inscriptions that time has nearly erased. What's in that shell? Matthew sighs. Nobody knows. It is part of the foundation of the monastery. They say it came from the Holy Land. They say it has the ability to store words never spoken. You approach the shell without touching it. The pigeon would then have stopped there, staring at the object. Could it be a coincidence? Historians still debate whether medieval monks exaggerated their spiritual interpretations of animal behavior. But in times when every sound, every gesture, every shadow was a possible divine sign, nothing went unnoticed. Did the pigeon leave something here? You ask. Matthias shakes his head. Nothing that the eyes can see. You thank him and leave. Outside, the wind has picked up. The clouds now cover the moon, and you feel a chill that is not just physical. One of the knights waits by the gate. And then, you lift the tube glass. The message is secure. And the pigeon? You smile sideways. It seems he had a destiny of his own. The answer satisfies, but it does not explain. You mount your horses again and set off, this time more slowly, as if the air were thicker, as if each step were drowning in questions. On the trail back, you open the tube, not to break the seal, but to take a closer look. The wax still smells of the court, resin, lavender, and a hint of rust, the scent of haste and secrecy. Are you going to read it? Asks the knight next to him. No, you answer. Not yet. First, I want to understand why he got lost. You stop in a wooded area to spend the night. You light a small fire. The silence is comfortable. One of the men plays an out-of-tune lute, and you close your eyes for a moment, and then a sound, suave. A scratching sound coming from inside the tube. You sit up again, alert. You put the tube to your ear. Nothing. Silence. But for a second you'd swear the paper inside moved. You lie down slowly. You think of the pigeon, the shell, the relic that holds words never spoken, and the question that begins to grow within you. What if the message isn't just what's written? What if the messenger left more than paper? You close your eyes, trying not to dream about pigeons speaking Latin. You wake up before the sun. Mist covers the ground as if someone had spilled milk over the world, and the first birds seem to sing in a forgotten language, more guttural than sweet. The other nights are still asleep, wrapped in woolen cloaks and snoring resignedly. But you are awake, not because you want to be, but because something in your chest seems restless, a kind of echo, as if you still hear that sound coming from the pipe during the night. You hold it more carefully now. It doesn't shake, it doesn't blow, it doesn't open. It just watches. The wooden tube is simple, but there are carvings you hadn't noticed yesterday. Small marks, claws, or maybe stylized claws, as if someone had engraved the image of a pigeon with its wings raised. In place of the eyes, 2 circular dots with an 8-pointed star around them, symbol of orientation. Or in some cultures, symbol of confusion. You put the tube away again and begin to prepare the horse. The sound of metal against leather breaks the soft silence of the camp and slowly wakes the others. One of them mutters, "I dreamed of a tower." From inside it, a pigeon was calling out my name. You don't answer. You just tighten the last knot and climb on, pulling the hood over your head. The plan now is to head to the castle where the message originated. Maybe, just maybe, you'll understand why the pigeons strayed. And most importantly, what did the queen want to hide so desperately that she relied on the unstable flight of a bird? The castle is 2 days away, but you decide to hurry. At noon, they stop to eat dry bread and hard cheese and drink water from a stone fountain. No one says much. The others also seem to be overcome by a kind of caution that comes not from the road but from the thing they are carrying. "That pigeon," one of the men finally says. "He wasn't normal, right?" You hesitate. "No." It seemed to stare back. "When I clapped my hands to shoo it away." You shake your head slowly. You remember the way he stared at the shell on the altar, as if he expected something from it. Or as if he understood. In the late afternoon, you can see the castle walls. It's not a military fortress. It's more like a cross between a convent and a palace. Slender towers, colorful stained glass windows, a stone bridge over a stream, so clear that fish seem to float in the air. The royal house's standard still flies from the tallest tower, a green background with 3 golden feathers, the symbol of peace and the word. But today, no one seems at peace. The gate is half open, with only a sleepy guard who widens his eyes when he sees you arriving. "Did you come because of—" You nod before he finishes. "Where is the queen?" He hesitates. "Not very well. Why?" "Ever since the pigeon disappeared, she refuses to speak. She sits in the chapel, waiting." You fasten the tube to your belt. "Does she know the pigeon is back?" "They told her, but she just wants to see it with her own eyes." You dismount. The breeze blows with the scent of old incense and lavender flowers. The evening light colors everything with an almost sad golden hue, and as you enter the chapel, you understand what the guard meant. The queen is there, sitting still, with her, back to you like a living statue. She wears a white veil that covers her hair but not her face, and on her face time has carved lines of waiting. You approach slowly. She doesn't turn around, but she speaks. "He came back." "He came back," and you answer. But not straight away. She closes her eyes. She takes a deep breath. "Did he get lost?" "Maybe. Or maybe—" "I remembered another way." She turns her face. For the first time, her eyes meet his. "So, he's—" "Like me." You hold out the tube. She holds it with firm hands but doesn't open it. "Can I read it?" She hesitates. "Not yet." Silence. There are words here that are not mine, and there are silences that are, she says. You step back. You give space. And finally, she places the tube on the chapel altar. It doesn't open. It doesn't burn. It just leaves it there, as if something still needs to happen before any of the lyrics make sense. Outside, the bells ring. 3 notes, then a pause. And then, from the window, a light sound, the wings of a pigeon. Other, or the same. You look. He lands on the ledge, surveys the scene, and seems to wait. Maybe by the answer, or maybe just for the next mission. The chapel slowly darkens, as if time also wanted to respect the silence that settles between you. The Queen says nothing for several minutes. Neither do you. Sometimes presence is enough. The pigeon is still there. On the windowsill, with slightly disheveled feathers and a beak dirty with dried earth, he looks more like a living statue than an animal. But there is something unsettling in the eyes, as if they didn't belong to a pigeon, as if there was something beyond, a silent, ancient consciousness. The Queen approaches the window, slowly. Her steps make the stone floor creak beneath the folds of her dress. She stops less than half a meter from the bird. "Do you know who I am?" he asks softly. The pigeon blinks, and then, as if he understood, he leaps from the parapet into the chapel. He walks across the floor with comical elegance, half stumbling, half marching to the altar. There, in front of the closed tube, he stops and he pecks the wood just once, touch, touch. The Queen takes a step back. "He wants me to read it," you nod. "Or that you remember what you wrote." She runs her hand slowly over the tube. "When we send these messages," she says, "we always think we are talking to someone else, but maybe in the end we are writing to ourselves. You don't know what to say to that, and maybe you don't need to." The Queen breaks the seal, a blue wax seal engraved with a slanted quill. The sound of the cracking wax echoes through the chapel like glass. She removes the lid. From inside she slides a narrow parchment, folded in 3. She opens it. But in his expression doesn't change, not a trace of emotion, not a tremor in her hands. Just eyes that slide over the lines as if they already knew every word, as if, in fact, she herself had written it for a future that was now reaching out to her. Historians still debate whether this type of message was common. You comment, trying to ease the tension. Whether pigeons really flew between palaces carrying confessions or just banal kitchen orders. The Queen smiles, a gesture as light as the folding of a petal. That wasn't trivial. She rolls the parchment up again, carefully, as if keeping it. There isn't hiding it, but protecting it. "It was about a son," she says, "a son who should not have been born, but was born and was hidden, and about the fear that made me an accomplice to silence." You realize now the weight on her shoulders, not of royalty, but of memory. And why did the pigeon lose its way? She looks at the animal, still standing attentive. Because the direct path wasn't the right one. Maybe it needed to be seen by non-judgmental eyes before I could remember who I was. You feel your throat tighten. The pigeon takes flight suddenly. Not in panic, not in flight, but as if it knows its part in the story is over. It flies over your head, through the rafters of the chapel and out the open door. Outside, the sky is darker. The stars begin to twinkle. The Queen walks to the altar. Once more, she picks up the empty tube. She puts the parchment back along with a new, smaller strip of paper. "An addendum," he says, "so that the next person who finds it knows that there was repentance." She closes the tube, and for the first time you see tears run soundlessly down her face. She doesn't apologize for them. You walk out of the chapel slowly, leaving her alone with her ghosts. On the outside balcony, the pigeon is perched again, with something new tied to the paw, an answer. And without anyone saying anything, you understand that it is your turn to take it. You hold the pigeon carefully. He can't resist. There is a strange understanding in his dark eyes, as if he knows exactly what is coming, as if he accepts the role assigned to him by human hands and capricious fates. The message on the leg is securely fastened with a thin leather strap. It's light, almost imperceptible, but you feel the symbolic weight of what you carry. As you walk through the chapel courtyard, the sound of your boots on the dew-soaked stone echoes in silence. Around you, the night spreads like dark ink spilled over the world. The moon peeks out from between the clouds, casting a silvery glow over the hills. You wonder where the pigeon will go now. To whom will this response be delivered? Or was the answer meant for you all along? As you reach the highest hill in the castle's surroundings, you extend your arm. The pigeon trembles, settles itself, looks one last time at the horizon, and then flies away. Not fast, not slow, a methodical flight, steady, as if following trails that only he knows in the sky. You follow it until you lose the dark dot between the stars, and then, alone with the night, he decides to sit on the grass. The wind blows lightly. It smells like moss and pine, the kind of air that clears memories and pushes old thoughts to the edge of consciousness. As you wait, for nothing in particular, you reflect on everything you saw, about messages that take a long time to arrive, about voices silenced by fear, about pigeons that get lost and sometimes find themselves, about queens who cry in silence because they have already screamed too much inside. Historians still debate whether these episodes are real or medieval exaggerations, whether a pigeon really delivered a letter that changed real destinies, or whether it is all just a legend fed by bored troubadours and poorly copied records. But here, at this moment, it doesn't matter, because there is something deeply human about wanting to tell a story. Even if it is with pens and faded ink, hours pass. You doze off and wake up to the sound of wings, not from the pigeon, but from another. White, with the tips of the feathers painted blue, the mark of the southern messengers. It lands before you, with almost magical precision, and in its paw, a new scroll. You untie it. With trembling fingers, you open it. It's a short text. For those who read what was not theirs, silence kept for too long needs a witness. Take it where it doesn't hurt. And, if you can laugh lightly at the end, you reread it 3 times. There is no name, no seal, just delicate, steady handwriting like someone who has written in storms. You put the paper in your pocket, not out of curiosity, but out of respect. The pigeon takes flight again, disappearing as if it had never existed, and then in the dark you feel something curious, no fear, no confusion, but peace. As if that story, so unlikely, had opened an internal door that you didn't even know existed. A door where lost words rest, waiting for someone, maybe you, to remember to read them quietly. You stand up, shake the grass off your shoulders and start walking down the hill. The night now seems warmer, and the world, though the same, sounds a little kinder, because somewhere a truth was told. Even if by a forgetful pigeon, the way back looks different. Not because the rocks have changed or because the trail has become shorter, but because something in you has changed. The trees sway gently in the night wind, and even the dry creaking. Branches seem to whisper ancient secrets. You have no exact destination. You just walk. Each step echoes like a comma in a sentence still being written. In the nearest village, the lights in the houses are off. It's dawn, the kind of silence that doesn't weigh you down, but lulls you. The kind of silence that only exists between stories that have ended and others that haven't even begun. You remember the parchment in your pocket. Resist the urge to reread. You prefer to leave it there, next to the warmth of your body. As if carrying that message was in itself a task. In the center of the village there is a stone well. You approach, place your hands on the cold rim and look inside. Not to see water, but to see a reflection. And there you are, with a face a little older than yesterday, or maybe just more awake. You remember the pigeon, the first one, the one that got lost, and imagine for a moment what his flight was like, if he was afraid when he realized he no longer recognized the sky. If you've landed in some strange place, expecting guidance that never came, or if he just kept flying, determined to deliver his letter to whoever seemed to need it. Historians still debate whether pigeons were truly as reliable as they claim, whether they were able to discern such complex destinations or were simply following conditioned instincts. There are reports of pigeons delivering messages in the middle of battles, in storms, and even during eclipses. But there is one obscure and little-mentioned account of a pigeon that disappeared for weeks and returned with the letter intact and a different-colored feather stuck in its foot. They never knew how to explain it. Maybe he was just waiting for the right moment to be read. You smile at the thought. On the edge of the well, someone has left a clay cup with something inside. You approach it. Warm milk with honey and a sliver of nutmeg. The kind of drink mothers made for anxious children, or for travelers who carried secrets in their pockets. You drink. Slowly, the liquid warms the throat like an ancient song, and then you realize you're not alone anymore. Sitting in front of him on the other edge of the well is an old man. White beard, small eyes, hands that have held more birds than swords. He looks at you, not with surprise, but with familiarity. "So he came to you," he says. You don't answer. You just nod. "I trained that pigeon," he continues. "Not to obey, but to choose." This takes him by surprise. "Pigeons, like stories," he says, "go where they're welcome, not where they're told." You remain silent. The old man too. A cat passes between you without making a sound, and the old man gets up. "If he trusted you, I trust you too." He places something in her hand, a small blue feather attached to a carved wooden ring. It's not to decorate. It's to remember. And then he leaves, disappearing into the alleys as if he were made of mist. You look at the feather. It is light, but not insignificant. Keep it in your pocket and keep walking. The sky is already beginning to lighten. And you know that today will be like any other day as far as the world is concerned. But inside you, there is now a whole story that no one sees. A story that only reveals itself when the silence stretches out and the pigeons lose their way. The sun rises slowly, as if it had woken up lazily. Shadows still dominate the corners of the houses, but a golden light is already beginning to stream through the windows and roofs. It's the kind of morning that feels more like a sigh. Not cold, not hot, just suspended between possibilities. You keep walking. You pass a sleeping windmill, abandoned vegetable gardens, a dog sleeping with its paw on its own nose. The world has not yet woken up, and this gives you the strange sensation of being out of time, as if each step you take precedes the clock, until at the top of a hill you see a garden. Not one of those ornamental ones, but a simple garden with crooked rows of herbs, edible flowers, and shrubs too small to provide shade. In the center, a woman. She is kneeling in the dirt, picking at the soil with her bare hands, as delicately as someone searching for a buried memory. Her hair is gray, tied in a loose bun, and her dress, tinged with rust, is covered in tiny seeds. You don't know why, but you get closer. She doesn't get scared. She doesn't get surprised. She just looks up and says, "You brought something, didn't you?" You hesitate. She points to her pocket, the one where the parchment still sleeps. "You don't have to show me," he says. "Just sit down." You obey. The ground is soft, the earth still damp with dew. She offers a halved root, beetroot perhaps, or something similar. You bite into it. It's sweet, earthy, a little spicy on the finish. "Many years ago," she begins, "a pigeon came to me with a leaf in its beak. It wasn't a letter, just a leaf. But I understood." You chew in silence. It was a mint leaf, a warning to plant more, a silent plea for freshness in a summer that would be long. She stands up, wipes her hands on her skirt, and walks over to a wooden box next to the flower bed. From there he takes out a small book, handmade with faded fabric cover. Open, you see dozens of drawings, feathers, maps, seeds, and pigeons. Each one has a name, and a date, and a note like "flew against the wind and won," or "like to rest near the bell." "That was Pigeon 47, she says, pointing to one of them. "The one who forgot the Queen's way." You hold your breath. But he didn't get lost. He rebelled. He chose a new path. She turns the page, and you were part of it. You ask almost without meaning to, "What now?" She smiles. "Now you decide what to do with what you know." Historians still wonder whether messages delivered by pigeons really changed the course of history, or whether they were merely supporting actors in larger events. But there is one thing that no one denies. Every delivery, no matter how small, had a destination, And destination is another word for choice. The woman closes the book. Give it to you. Not to keep, to continue. You hold it like someone who has been given a responsibility or a key. She returns to her garden. You get up and, down the hill. On the horizon, the sky opens up in shades of copper and lavender. The breeze no longer carries the weight of dawn, and in the distance, as if coming from an impossible direction, you hear the beating sound of wings. But don't look up, because now, for the first time, you understand. What matters is not the sky, but the ground that you walk on with meaning. You walk lighter, and behind you, on the soft earth of that hill, are the marks of your steps. The road before you is not straight. It winds between small hills, passes through silent woods, and passes by pools of dew, as if the world were trying to show you that even detours have beauty. You hold the small book in both hands. It pulses. Not with light, not with heat, but with the strange sensation that something ancient is rearranging itself inside. Each step feels more certain now. Not because you know exactly where you're going, but because you are going. In the middle of the road, you see a stopped cart. It is empty except for a chest carved with designs of wings, symbols that resemble winds, and a single feather tied to the doorknob. Beside it, a man sits on a rock chewing something that looks like stale bread. He looks up and says, "You have a delivery." You freeze. "How do you know?" He smiles with his eyes. "I am the one who takes you to the last point. No further." Only as far as the word reaches. You hesitate for a moment. Then you open the book. The pages are strangely blank. All except one, where there is a new design. A map. Simple, made of curves and lines that resemble a trail in the middle of the forest, ending at a point marked with the word Cachoeira. "It's over there," says the man, "but you'll go on foot." "I can't carry that." You thank him. He nods. "Just remember, what was forgotten by the pigeon is now remembered by you." You say goodbye and set off along the indicated trail, which moves away from the main road, entering a dense forest. The trees are tall, ancient, with moss-covered trunks and branches that rustle in the wind. Sunlight drips through the leaves, forming little golden circles on the ground. There is a silence here that is not empty. It is full of waiting. You feel like you are being watched, but not with fear, with anticipation. At the end of the trail, you hear the sound of water, first weak, then stronger. The vegetation opens up, and in front of you, the waterfall. Tall, wide, with translucent water flowing in veils over darkened stones. Beside it, a stone altar covered with lichen and thyme. And above it, an open cage, empty. There is no sign of a pigeon, just the breeze from the waterfall blowing upwards like a breath of soul. You come closer. Place the book on the altar, and for the first time, he understands that it was not meant to be kept. It was meant to be left there as a sign, as an echo. You take a step back, and then you hear the sound. They flap their wings. From within the forest, a white dove emerges. Not majestic, not clean, just tired, determined. He lands on the altar. Step on the book, and it stays there. You hold your breath. He looks at you, tilts his head. Then he spreads his wings and flies away, carrying the book close to his chest, held in place by a strip of linen. At the top of the waterfall, it spins once in the air and disappears into the blue. Historians still debate the use of waterfalls as symbolic message sites in the Middle Ages. Some believe they were simply sacred places for rituals. Others believe that messengers left messages hidden under wet rocks. But here now the debate is irrelevant, because you saw it with your own eyes, and that was part of it. You stay there for a while, not out of obligation, but to breathe. Because when a message ends, the silence that remains is also a response, and you learn to listen. You stand in front of the waterfall for longer than you think. The sound of the water becomes a kind of background music to your thoughts, or maybe just a soft blanket over the silence that comes after something important. There are no more messages to deliver, no more maps to decipher, no more pigeons to wait for. And yet, something moves inside you, a kind of faint echo, like when someone whispers and your memory holds the whisper longer than the speech itself. When he decides to return, his steps are slow. Not because of tiredness, but like someone trying not to leave footprints, like someone respecting the ground he has just crossed. The trail back looks a little different. Maybe the sun is at a different angle. Maybe the trees have secretly moved. Or maybe you're looking at it with different eyes. Halfway there, a child appears, sitting on a rock, with a hood covering part of her face and a piece of old cloth in her hands. When you approach, she looks up. "The pigeon passed by here," he says, as if commenting on the weather. You smile. She spreads out the cloth. On it, there is an embroidered design, the image of a pigeon with a tiny crown. And just below, embroidered in crooked letters, "The message has arrived." "Did you do this?" you ask. She shrugs. "I just continued what someone else started." You thank him and move on. As you walk, you begin to notice little things. A linen thread tied between two branches, a dark feather on a stone, a footprint. That is not yours. And then further on, something even more curious. A row of painted stones arranged in the shape of arrows. You follow them. They lead to a small village, simpler than the previous ones, but with a strangely lively energy. The people seem busy with everyday tasks, but with a kind of lightness in their gestures. Someone is sweeping a staircase while singing. A lady is handing out hot pies to children, with her hands full of mud. A dog is sleeping with a letter attached to its collar. Yes, a letter. You approach it carefully. The letter is sealed with a familiar symbol, the same design you saw on the messenger's medallion at the beginning of your journey. You gently release the seal. Inside, there is just one handwritten line. The most important messages, always, arrive, even when the pigeon forgets the way. You laugh alone, and at that moment everything seems to make sense. Historians still debate the actual reliability of carrier pigeons over long distances. Some claim that the success rate was astonishing. Others say that many got lost on unexpected routes, changed destinations, or simply decided not to return. There are curious records of messages that arrived years after they were sent, brought by birds that, for some mysterious reason, reappeared as if time did not matter. But the truth is, the world always finds a way. You sit on a wooden bench, next to a lavender field. The sun is setting. The sweet, earthy scent of the flowers mingles with the aroma of wood burning in a nearby kitchen, and for a moment, you feel like you're not just watching a story. You are inside it, part of a cycle. Part of a tradition that perhaps not even books have recorded. You close your eyes and he sees the pigeon again up in the sky, flying without haste, as if destiny were just an excuse to keep moving. He flies, and you rest, because now there is no more rush. The message arrived, and so do you. Night falls slowly. You hear the first sounds of the village fading away, the creak of a closed window, the clink of spoons picked up from a table, the muffled sound of laughter that soon turns to whispers. The sky darkens like a curtain being gently pulled back, revealing a deepening blue, dotted with stars that slowly light up. You decide to stay a little longer. There is an inn at the end of the street, with a simple porch made of worn wood and a rocking chair that looks like it has been waiting for you for years. Next to it, a bowl of water. Inside the inn, an irresistible smell of cinnamon and herbs dormant in honey. You sit down, take a deep breath, and then you notice, right there on the balcony railing lies a feather. Different from the others, thin, shiny with a slight greenish tinge around the edges. You don't touch it, you just stare. The owner of the inn appears, silent as a whisper. She hands him a glass of warm chamomile and lemon balm tea. "You've traveled far," she says, with a smile that seems too knowing. "Yes," you reply, without needing to explain anything. She points to the feather. "He passed by here too. He rested for a while. It seems he got lost, but he came back." "Where did you go back to?" you ask. She shrugs her shoulders with a slight gesture of mystery, maybe for what it matters. You smile and take a sip. The drink is sweet, but not sugary. It's the kind of flavor that makes you remember things you've never experienced. Afternoons that smell like rain, forgotten hugs, promises made in silence. Inside, someone strums an out-of-tune lute. The melody sounds incomplete, or maybe just too sincere to fit into a regular song. You rest your head against the wood of the chair, and he thinks about everything he saw, about the maps that were useless, about the messages that seemed urgent, and then became obsolete, about the pigeon that flew the wrong way but was still useful, about the people who helped without understanding, and about those who laughed, as if the world could be light even in the midst of chaos. Historians are still trying to define the true importance of winged messengers in times of war and peace. Some argue that pigeons were responsible for saving entire armies. Others say that their value was more symbolic than practical. They represented hope. They represented a chance to stay connected, even when everything around us seemed to be falling apart. You look at the sky. The stars seem closer. Today, the moon rises behind the hills, round, full, like a seal on a very old envelope. You feel a pleasant weight on your shoulders, not of responsibility, but of belonging, as if all this time this whole story had been written not to teach you anything, but just to accompany you here. In the dark, you hear wings beating. Don't see the pigeon, but you know he passed, and in that moment, he understands. Some messages don't need to arrive. They just need to be sent. The next morning arrives with a mist so light it looks like it was drawn by hand. You wake slowly, hearing first the sounds of the village waking, the breeze rustling. Through the leaves, a door being carefully opened, the crackle of fresh bread being broken in some unseen corner. The inn smells of warm wood and dried herbs hanging from the doorframe. Outside, the world goes on, but something has changed. You feel it. It's as if that little journey, all based on the uncertain flight of a lost pigeon, has reorganized your inner rhythm. Nothing grand has happened. No war has been won. No prophecy has been fulfilled. And yet there is a new silence within you, one that listens more than it responds. You dress calmly. The light streams through the wavy glass windows like a river of pale gold. As you go downstairs, you find a round loaf of bread wrapped in cloth on the table. Next to it, a note. To stay light. You laugh and take it. The street is still empty. You walk towards the village's central fountain, where water flows slowly through a stone channel. Next to it, a child throws seeds to the birds, and among the sparrows and crows, you see him. The pigeon. Yes, that one. The slightly green feather. The confident walk of someone who has been lost so many times that he is no longer in a hurry to find himself. He doesn't carry anything. No tape, no message tube, and yet everyone around him seems to notice his presence. It's as if he carries with him a silent reminder that some things, even if they're wrong, are still important simply because they're done with intention. You sit near the fountain. The pigeon walks to the edge of the rock, dips its beak into the water. Drink with the tranquility of someone who no longer has to prove anything to anyone. Then, without ceremony, he flies away. Not in a straight line, not towards the Queen's castle or some distant tower. Just fly. And that's enough. You close your eyes for a moment. The sound of the fountain mixes with the light scratching of the wind between the leaves. Historians still debate whether the famous story of the pigeon that carried secrets and got lost is real, or just a persistent legend. There are records in old letters, yes, and even in chronicles written on the margins of political treaties. But what no one can deny is the symbol that this story has become. The failure that was still useful, the loss that became a fable, the mistake that became hope, and when you remember that, you smile. Because perhaps that is the most important thing. Not to be infallible, but to be remembered. And you now are part of that memory. The afternoon is like silk over the town. You walk through an open field where tiny wildflowers endure the end of the season. Sunlight streams down at oblique angles, painting the landscape in soft shades of gold and rust. The air is still but not empty. There is life in every rustle of a leaf, every distant bird call, every step you take aimlessly but with intention. On the hill, an old windmill turns slowly. You approach and find an old man sitting in the shade, slowly fiddling with a tangled web of wires. He doesn't look at you. He just says, as if continuing a conversation that was interrupted years ago, "Sometimes it's the wrong pigeon that lands in the right place." You smile, sit next to him and say nothing, because you don't need to. In the distance, a cart creaks past, pulled by a sleepy ox. A woman waves from inside, a teal scarf tied in her hair. And you realize no one here is in a hurry. Not the animals, not the humans, not the time. The net in the old man's hands grows slowly. He is, in effect, making a small carrying bag. 4 letters that have not yet been written, he says. You look at the sky. No sign of pigeons now. But something in the deep blue seems to hold their memory. In your mind you revisit the beginning of this journey. The queen waiting for news, the scarlet ribbon, the disoriented dove, the hidden village, the messages that arrived without paper, but in the form of presence, of gesture, of breath. And you see, that pigeon may have gotten lost, but perhaps it delivered the right message, not to a throne, but to a heart. Historians still disagree about the final destination of the Queen's letter. Some say she was found years later, in the nest of a retired pigeon in a forgotten village. Others believe it never existed, that it was all just a made-up story to justify diplomatic silence or frustrated hope. But no one disputes the effect it had. The way it inspired poets, priests, bakers, shepherds, and even an old craftsman weaving bags for invisible messages. You stand up calmly. The shadow of the mill stretches out like a protective arm. The village begins to light its first lamps, each point of light flickering like a secret signal in the darkness. And as you walk back, you notice something curious. You also carry a story now, one that you might tell someone, or maybe not. But it's inside you like a feather stuck in the fold of your coat. Arriving at the inn, you find a small envelope attached to the door. No stamp. No name. Just a folded sheet of paper with a handwritten sentence. Not every message needs to arrive to have fulfilled its destiny. You put the sheet in your pocket, then turn off the light, and finally, rest. Now that all is said, done, flown, lost, and perhaps found, it's time to rest. Take a deep breath. The kind of breath that only comes after long walks along stone paths, golden fields, and village streets that only exist in whispered bedtime stories. Let the details disappear like footprints carried by. The wind, the scarlet ribbon, the hesitant dove, the letter that may never have been read. All this can wait. Or maybe it has already fulfilled its role, simply because it was remembered. Or dreamed. Now there is only the distant sound of wings at rest, the soft light of a candle that never threatens to set anything on fire, just soothes, and the certainty that even messengers forgotten along the way find a place to land. Allow yourself. This landing too. Your body is light, your mind is at ease, and the world outside, with all its secrets and noises, can wait until tomorrow. For now, you are here, safe, at peace. May your dreams be soft as feathers, and may each night bring you the same lightness as a letter that arrives slowly without haste, but exactly when you need it most.